We'll go ahead and get started with our hybrid town hall meeting. So I'm here at Tradewinds Church in Soquel Village, and we also have about 20 folks joining us online. You'll notice this mic is not actually projecting anything. This is really just to improve the sound pickup for the online audience. And when we do go to question and answer at the end of the meeting, we'll pass around the mic. Please do hold it up to your mouth so that the folks who are joining online can also hear your very important questions. And all right, I guess Christina is an analyst with the First District office here, helping set up and with slides. All right, and I guess I'll motion to you when we're ready to move forward with the slides, which now would be a good time. Want to go to the next one? Okay, great. So I do rotate this monthly town hall meeting around the First District. We have the most area that's outside of the incorporated cities, and so it really is important to drill down on individual neighborhoods and look at the specific issues. So you'll see, I'll talk about 6 things specific to the Soquel area this evening. Then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end, and we can talk about anything else that you want to talk about. And happy to talk about things outside specifically of the area, but just as far as the content that I prepared to share with you tonight, did want to drill down on Soquel Village. And then for those of you joining online, when we get on to questions, if you could just go ahead and use the raise hand button. It's the smiley face icon and the little raise hand button, and we'll call on you in the order that you raise your hands. All right, well, let's just jump right in. Next slide, please. I thought about biking over here, but then I decided to drive because so often one of the top issue that I hear through the village is the congestion issue. So it's always good to experience these things firsthand. And some of you may have noticed this past year that we started on this project, the Soquel Drive buffered bike lane and traffic or congestion. What was the official name? Congestion mitigation project. So some of the sidewalks have been dug up, and they're putting in improved ramps for accessibility, filling in sidewalk gaps. We're putting in a bunch of new the rapid flashing beacons for safer mid-block crossings. In fact, the one right in front of the post office in the village is going to get a new sign, so that the eye level lights rather than the broken ones in the road. That's also why we removed the trees there by the post office, was just to make sure that that sign is as visible as possible and pedestrians crossing there are as visible as possible. We have had a number of pedestrian, bike, car accidents at that very intersection. I think it's somewhere 4 or 5 in the last few years, and so we really want to minimize those kinds of accidents. That's a big point of this project. You can see here, there's just a diagram with some better, some. Oh yeah, that's problematic. Well, I could quickly sign on with my computer and you can move through the slides. All right, we'll take a 3-minute break. Make sure the audience can see the slides. Sorry about that. New location. Okay, sorry about that. We will continue. So this project really going to ramp up this year, and it'll be done by the end of the year. It's largely just the sidewalk gap closure, some striping. Oh, and we're going to dig up the street and put fiber along the whole thing and put in 22 smart lights. That's probably the biggest piece of it. So right now, as I was coming over here, I was sitting about Thurber where the traffic started, and it was red. Then the next light I could see was green, and then the next light was red, and then who knows after that, right? So the smart light functionality means that all the lights will turn green at once, they'll all be red at once, and traffic will move a lot better that way. Um, yeah, and like I said, this will pretty much be done by the end of the year. The highway project is probably going to be middle of 2025 before that wraps up. Okay, next slide. And the other piece of getting this flowing is we did get money for a light at Robertson Road. It's my top project actually for the area, specifically because we want the Soquel Drive improvement project to work, and that can't happen without this light. It's the last stop sign intersection on Soquel Drive, and so it's important that we signalize it so that this is smart too. Um, and this will probably get built in 2025. You might say, why the heck is it going to take you a whole year to get this silly stoplight in? The answer is, next slide. As I've had many conversations with Director Lucchese here, that we need to look at really a few of these intersections here. So Porter and Soquel, and then past that to Dalbenbus. We're going to see if there's any opportunity to make this 2 lanes going in both directions. Right now, you can see that the receiving lane on the north side of Soquel is just 1 lane, and that's why you have to go down to 1 lane to go through at Soquel, and then that backs up all the way to Bargetto Bridge over Soquel Creek and in front of the fire station. So part of putting this light in is going to be a study of, well, should we actually get rid of the light at Dalbenbus? That would then get rid of the need for a left turn storage there, and allow us to have 2 lanes all the way through this area. Um, and then ultimately, once that's figured out, we'll build it and potentially restripe this area as well. Next slide. Advancing on. All right, great. Another thing you might have noticed, I put this in the newsletter recently, is that we are expanding the B-Cycle program. This is the bike share program. We're going to have 1 bike share program throughout the county. So the city and UCSC have already, city of Santa Cruz and UCSC have already launched this. Unlike the jump program that we saw before, this is a fully docked program. So you have to go from you check out a bike at 1 dock and return it to a dock. I think that maybe you can park it at a restaurant in between or something, but it's still checked out. And the result is it's going to reduce the number of bikes you see just parked on the sidewalk significantly. We know that was a top concern with the last program. So this is rolling out to Mid-County, not quite Soquel Village yet. We're starting to talk about it. You can see a number of the locations throughout the Live Oak, Pleasure Point area here. And the city of Capitola is putting in, I think, over 20 stations as well. Some of the suggestions for stations in Soquel Village have been the Heart of Soquel Park, Anna Jean Cummings Park, or Blue Ball Park, and the Lions Park over past the school. If you have any other suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them. Next slide. And then the other thing that we're looking at is actually amending current e-bike laws. I've heard a lot of concern from folks about e-bikes riding on sidewalks and close misses. And we're looking at right now, there's nothing that prevents e-bikes from doing that. We are looking at updating county code so that it's actually no longer legal to ride an e-bike, at least with e-bike assist, on sidewalks. And that should give us some more enforcement capabilities from most likely CHP, California Highway Patrol, or the Sheriff's Office. Next slide. I think you could. Yeah, yeah. And so right there, I hear that concern all the time. There's 3 kids, some of them are wearing helmets. They're going on the wrong side of the street on the sidewalk. So it is actually required for people under 18 to wear helmets in California when riding a bike of any kind, including e-bikes. Um, we can't license e-bikes yet under state law, although I know some state legislators have introduced bills asking that happen. And the county, we could certainly write a letter supporting programs like that. Um, there is actually, I guess, for the class 3 e-bikes, which are like the faster ones that can go 28 miles an hour, you do have to be at least 16 years old. Um, but yeah, so I mean, really limiting e-bike use on sidewalks is the main thing that we can do locally. Saying where they can and can't go. We could also say, they can't go in parks potentially. I think already actually e-bikes are not allowed on most uh, park paths. I'll double check that. Um, but some of these larger regulations are going to require work with our state partners as well. So the question is, would this be for class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes? Yeah, that we're contemplating right now. I mean, we're literally writing the ordinance or drafting it. We're thinking no electric assist at all on sidewalks. I mean, so doesn't matter what class, and also including electric scooters. Yeah. Next slide. Also kind of related to the whole Soquel Drive project, you may have noticed the farm park is being used for storage of equipment right now. I'm sorry about that. It's unfortunate, but really is the only kind of public area, publicly owned space in the area that could be used for this staging. And when the project is done at the end of the year, we'll host a community meeting about sort of the future of the farm park. A lot of that planning work has already been done, but I think it's been a while, and we've gone after a number of state grants to try to really do the big uh, dream projects there and not won them. So we really need to start looking at what we can do more, either as an interim project or sort of low budget project. And I will work with the Parks Department to host a community meeting later in the year when we're getting close to wrapping up the Soquel Drive project about what can be done there. There's interest in bike jumps, but there's plenty of other things we can do as well, expanding the garden plots or other things. Next slide. Another little parks related project to make you guys aware of. So back in the 2016-17 storms, the hillside near Lions Park or Creek Bank was significantly eroded. And so you are going to see some construction this year as we put in a improved retaining wall around Lions Park to fix that erosion and prevent more in the future. I have not heard of any plans for sidewalks. Is there a particular area you're concerned, like on the other side of Main Street there, making sure they connect all the way? Yeah, I don't think that is part of this particular project because, we're getting like FEMA money to do a repair related to storm damage. So I don't think we can throw the sidewalk in there, but I do hear the need to close the sidewalk gap in this location as well. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. Soquel Creek flooding. Obviously, we so far, and fingers crossed, have made it out without any repeat incidents this year. But of course, this was a big issue problem last year, and I think it's got us all thinking about it a little bit more. The Zone 5 flood control district manages this area in blue here. And that's kind of the government entity that deals with flooding, as well as all the storm drains in this area. Next slide. You can see here a map of the same area showing both the natural waterways and then basically all the storm drains that we use to augment and the drainage. So it's a pretty significant area, and it includes folks that sit on this board, or both the Board of Supervisors as well as members of Capitola City Council, because as you can see, pretty much all of Capitola is included as well. Next slide. So this whole area, we've just did a big master plan study to see how it's doing, how the storm drains are holding up against these increased flow, heavy storm events like we had last year. Did find a couple of areas that needs pretty immediate attention, mostly down here on the 38th Portola area, the Nobel Creek into Soquel Creek intersection there in Capitola Village is probably one of the biggest concerns. Um, so actually just doing some of and then there's lots of kind of routine maintenance work and work to improve the flow capacity through these various channels that we need to do. So this is, did I put a price tag on there? Yeah. Estimated cost, oh, just 37 to $63 million to do all this. So there is going to be some outreach later this year as we figure out, okay, how are we going to pay for this? The options are property tax related fee, a special tax, and what I'm guessing is probably everyone in this room's preferred option, development impact fees. Make the new guys pay for it. We'll see how much we can balance those ultimately. It would take probably quite a bit of building to pay for everything. Um, so just for people in this map area that you see behind me, because the zone 5 suggests, there's more than one zone, right? So for example, zone 7 down in the Watsonville Pajaro area, that includes the Pajaro River and has its own set of problems. I don't know which zone it is, but around the San Lorenzo River has its own set of problems. So yeah, this price tag and these projects are just for zone 5. I did ask, and after the last storms, we did analyze whether we could do any kind of projects to prevent overtopping of the Soquel Creek flooding, right? And basically, it would require getting the Army Corps of Engineers involved in the same way they are working on the Pajaro Levee project. And that has taken a decade of advocacy to get enough money together and ultimately to get the project moving. So basically, it would probably double the cost of, from 60 to $120 million here of the overall improvements to this area if we were going to try to, put a levee of some kind along Soquel Creek. So we're not really pursuing it at the moment because of that. Next slide. One of the last things I'll mention, you might have seen in a recent newsletter, there has been interest in this site, 41st and Soquel Drive, which was previously being considered for a Nissan dealership. During our housing element and sustainability update, that sort of big changes to the general plan we did recently, we outlined that we'd prefer to do housing at this site or mixed use development. And we do have interest from an affordable housing developer in doing a project here for over 100 units of housing and maybe some mixed use as well. They're still trying to figure it out, and they have to, with affordable housing, ultimately win grants in order to make the project work. So they're looking at those various aspects. So this is not a done deal yet, but it is good that there's at least some interest. And what I've heard from folks is that there's a preference for some kind of mixed use development here, both commercial and residential, rather than sort of just commercial or another car dealership. If you guys have different opinions, please let me know. Yeah, right. Right. So the question is about what the current zoning is, because before it was zoned for mixed use, then it was zoned to C4, which is really more like light industrial commercial uses. Um, Technically that's the zoning it has now, but the county's basically said we want to rezone it back to C2 or a residential zoning type that allows a little bit of commercial, and we'll do that. It's not going to be additional cost to anyone that wants to do a project here. Um, so yeah, I think I'm almost done. Actually, next slide. I'll just one last thing, and then happy to take more audience questions and just pass around the mic. Um, this just sort of affects everyone in the area. So particularly if you live in the mountains, AT&T has applied to the Public Utilities Commission for the state, the California Public Utilities Commission, to uh, be what's basically stop being the carrier of last resort for copper landlines, which would mean that they ultimately no longer have to maintain them. They're saying they will maintain them even if they get relieved of this obligation. They're just going to sort of try to find someone else ultimately to do it. Um, Regardless, having grown up in the mountains myself and talking to a lot of you guys, I know how important it is that we maintain those landlines uh, and that access, particularly when power goes down for long periods of time. I think in the 23 storms, I heard someone being without power for 40 days. So in those cases, you really want your landline to work. And so at our last meeting, the Board of Supervisors, both myself and Supervisor Friend proposed that we oppose this application to the Public Utilities Commission by AT&T. We passed that resolution. And we also invited AT&T back to our meeting next Tuesday just to tell us their side of the story. We already heard some of it, but to tell us a little bit more of their side of the story and to take public comment from you all if you wanted to dial in or come down to Ocean Street next Tuesday and tell them how you feel about this. Next slide. Yeah, that's all I got for prepared material, and I'm happy to talk about any questions you all have on your minds. And I think we've got a second mic here that we can pass out. You can exit out of the presentation. Okay, I think question here.
Years ago, there was something called Dig Once, and it was that once they dig up a street, they were going to put in all the infrastructure to not dig up the street again. Mm-hmm. And Soquel Drive in particular has gone through 2 recent dig ups for, I'm guessing, the water thing. Mm-hmm. And so now Soquel Village is going to go through another dig up for these fiber lines. And so is the dig once abandoned, or can we put in any other infrastructure when they're digging it up just to, because it's just so problematic when they dig up?
Yeah, dig once is still in place, and I will double check to what extent we are going to need to dig more. I mean, there actually already is other fiber lines in the street here. I could be wrong. Maybe it's not going to be an extensive dig up because we can just pull the new fiber through the same conduit. Yeah, I'll look at the specifics of what installing fiber means along this corridor. Hopefully less rather than more, because as you said, it's been worked on significantly before. Other questions? Gerald? Oops.
Back to the question about zoning, 41st Avenue and Soquel. You said at one time it was mixed use, it changed to light industrial. You said now the county wants to change it back to mixed use. Define the county. Who is it that really wants to change it back to mixed use?
Well, I suppose the whole board passed the housing element, which included saying we want to change this back to mixed use. So it was sort of partially a way to meet the requirements that the state was putting down on us as far as making sure there's more housing in our community. And so partially that requirement and partially, I think the board agreeing that that site makes sense. Yeah. Let's take a new person before we circle back to.
Attention to safety on the roads. I really do. That's very important. Not just my age, but younger people. Oh, okay. My question is about speeding down Soquel, right past this church, through the traffic lights and up the other side toward Cabrillo. I think it's a 35-mile-an-hour zone. Does anybody know for sure? Citizens don't know.
Yeah, but you're right.
It is. So, and by my estimation, 45 miles an hour is fairly frequent. What steps are being taken or can be taken to reduce that problem?
Yeah. So when it comes to speeding, solutions we have are the 3 E's. So education, enforcement, and engineering. Um, you know, we could. I'm not sure how effective education will be ultimately here, given that so many people use it for this corridor for so many different reasons. So enforcement, we can just certainly work with CHP to have them out here more frequently, particularly at times when people are likely to speed. Maybe, I mean, and you tell me if there's a specific time that'll be most effective, but later at night when the roads are open, I know I've talked to residents that live right off of Soquel, and they hear people using it as a raceway at 5 a.m. Or engineering. So part of this project, putting in the green bike lanes, and we're really making the bike lanes actually as wide as possible and reducing the width of the lanes a little bit. And so that should visually restrict the roadway, and people tend to drive slower through narrower areas. It's just, safer, right? So that could improve things a little bit. We could also look at speed feedback signs. Um, I, One other thing actually is that the Metro bus is talking about putting some in-lane boarding islands. So the island would bulb out a little bit. The bike lane would go behind the island, and the bus would come up and not get out of the lane. It would stay in the lane and allow people to board. And that way, the bus doesn't have a problem getting back in. And that will also ultimately slow down traffic a little bit as well. Um, Part of that is we're also going to make the bus free the second half of this year, starting probably around September. So that means that people will be able to board front and back doors. The boarding should go a lot faster. Um, but yeah, those are the ideas I can think of. I'm certainly be happy to consider any other suggestions folks have for how to address the speeding issue here.
Are there going to be any plastic little fence rods along the side of the
Right.
bike lane?
Are we going to have bollards?
Oh.
Wherever we can, yes.
Okay.
Basically, the engineers looked at the width of the road. We're not taking away any lanes. We're not making the road actually wider. So wherever it was possible to fit in enough space to then have a bollard and protect the bike lane, we have.
Yeah.
Um,
I just
in
wanna
some
say-
places it wasn't wide enough, and so there's just sort of a buffer, which means like an extra foot with hashed stripe marking, to just effectively make a larger, safer area for bikes. But if we could
I
put in
just wanna
bollards, we are.
Say that CHP does a good job, almost too good. I was caught speeding.
I guess that's a good thing in this context.
Thank you, Manu, for tonight. I know we in the county are short on cash to do some of the high priced projects. And Supervisor Zach Friend and yourself sort of took the charge a couple months ago to try to get a higher allocation of taxes into our county. We get 13% and the other 50 counties get 21%. Where are you guys at on that effort?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, John. This has been like probably one of the most difficult things I ran into when taking office, is realizing, hey, we're actually just a poor county because of the way this tax structure is. Our taxes are structured. And as you had the numbers basically right, we get 13%, and most counties, the average statewide is 20% that comes to the county. So of course I've talked to our legislators like John Laird. I mean, we passed this resolution saying we acknowledge it's a problem, it needs to change. I talked to John Laird and said, okay, well, here you go. Are you going to do something about us? Are you going to represent us in the state house and make this happen? And he's like, well, it's going to be difficult in a deficit year. Like, yes, we know. We want you to work on it. Start working with the legislative analyst's office or something. So there's the top-down approach. I'm going to meet with Robert Rivas's office here soon. San Benito County, where he's from, also has a very low rate. I think it's like 14 or 15%. And because he's the speaker in the assembly, I think that gives us a bit of an edge. More likely something will be done about it. I've also gotten the appointment from our county to the California State Association of Counties. So I intend to work with other counties to get them to pass similar resolutions, and so that more counties are acknowledging it's a problem, and ultimately put some bottom-up pressure on our state legislators to act as well. Ultimately, I do think the reason we have a chance at doing this is that some of the bigger counties with a lot of population are in the lower end of the amount of property taxes they get. So Orange County, Fresno County, San Bernardino County, San Diego County, some of the big counties with, multiple millions of people in them. So it's that 20% average is just looking across the 58 counties. It's not weighted by population. And if you actually look at the population in the state, more of them are under that average than above. And so I do think that there's a credible threat of we'll pass a ballot initiative if you and our legislators don't take action. Right now, it'd be preferable if our legislators did it, because then they can kind of tinker with it and make improvements in the future. But it helps to have the alternative if we need it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just going to start talking to some of the other counties in a couple of weeks. Yeah, somewhere between 40 and 70 million dollars. And so put it in context, the half-cent sales tax that's on the ballot, Measure K, will raise about $10 million a year. When you look at the entire discretionary general fund budget for the county, it's $200 million. So we manage 1.2 billion total, but a lot of that is state money that flows through the county, and we kind of just rubber stamp it. But really, when it comes to what we can say, yeah, we need to spend this on our infrastructure and this on public safety, it's that 200 in discretionary general fund money that matters. Sure.
And a
Yeah.
quick question for you. About 2 years ago, my car was stolen in front of my house, just a mile or two up the road here. And they found it like about a month later, and I don't think it ever left the county. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on license plate readers. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm for them. I mean, it would have been a way to find your car faster if we'd had some out. Yeah, I think it's. I guess I'm inclined to support them, right? I mean, I haven't had a lot of conversations with the public about it. I know there's concerns over privacy, but I do think that, as you just iterated, there's a lot of potential benefits as well. Heck, when concerns about speeding were first brought to my attention on Soquel San Jose Road, I thought, well, why don't we have like speed enforced license plate reader or license plate readers to do speed enforcement? Well, actually, that's not legal currently under state law. A bunch of cities and counties have asked that it become legal, but that's kind of where we are. Yeah, I think that the technology could certainly have benefits, and would be happy to look into it further.
Hey, we've had a lot of damage from storms last year, and I can see we're getting a lot of rain this year. A lot of infrastructure was having to be rebuilt.
Yeah. Well, the short answer is we are, and eventually the state and the federal government will help us out with it. But yeah, FEMA says they'll pay for 75% of the damages, and then Cal Office of Emergency Services will pay for another 12.5%. So that just leaves us, in theory, with 12.5% of the repair costs. In reality, they dispute some of those costs, and we kind of budget that we're going to have to pay 20% at the end of the day. But the rub is that there have been 7 federally declared disasters in our county in the last 6 years. Used to be like one every 10 years. And then when you look at FEMA's budget nationwide, they had in 2023 25 $1 billion or greater of disaster events. But they're only getting funded $10 billion a year. So basically the line at FEMA is getting longer and longer and longer to get repaid. We're still waiting to get repaid for 2016-17 storm damage and for COVID shelters and other work that we did. And now the fighting has started. Right now, they're saying, "Oh well, we're only going to reimburse you for 20 days of COVID shelters," right? Or like, we got a lot of the people experiencing homelessness off the street into hotel rooms because the state and federal government asked us to. We said, "Okay," and they said, "And we'll pay you. Just make it happen. Keep them safe." Okay, we did it. Now they're saying, "Oh, we're only going to pay you for 20 days of that." So that's like, $11 million that's in dispute. The total amount right now that we're waiting to get reimbursed from FEMA is $150 million. And what we have to do in the short term, we basically completed 80 to $90 million worth of work just this past year, repairing the storm damage. We think there's maybe another 100 million still out there. But we did as much as we could quickly because we could do it under emergency permits, which basically means less design requirements, faster permitting process, probably saved us 40% of the total project cost. It made sense to do it. But now we have to issue a bond. We're basically going to do what's called a lease revenue bond, where we put up the county building or Emmeline Health Center as collateral and technically lease it back from whoever gives us the money until the debt's paid off. But it is precarious, because we're going to be paying interest on that bond of, I think, $2 to $3 million a year, and that we're not getting reimbursed for. That is our money that we'll never see again. So yeah, the disaster costs are really adding up, and it poses a big challenge to our county budget going forward.
As the weather gets good, the intersection with Carpo's and Beer 30, and now they pronounce it Butzos, I think, Buzzos.
Butzos.
Butzos, yeah. And the new Beer 30, that is just a hotbed of vehicle crisscross trafficking. And at night, on a pretty night where it's dark and it's a big turn, it's just so dangerous. And if the county doesn't have the funding to put in sidewalks, at least so that people can walk to their cars closer towards East Walnut, are any of those businesses required to make some kind of accounting for the amount of parking that they're requiring?
Good question. So typically when a business goes in and we give them the permits that they require, that's when we would address sort of mitigation issues for potential impacts. So if they haven't done it yet, it would be kind of hard to, get a hook on the issue. We could certainly look at putting a flashing crosswalk over in that area as a way to maybe get more people to cross at the crosswalk rather than anywhere within a 100-yard zone, and for it to be more visible when they do. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, those flashing crosswalks do really work. So I've been installing them as fast as we can everywhere in the county, and we'll certainly take it as a suggestion to do it in that area. And then
Supervisor? Sorry to interrupt. I believe the mic might have cut out for the resident. Not sure if the battery died.
You want to just speak your question? Oh, sorry. You don't have the mic.
Recently, Michael's on Main had a significant fire, and so a lot, and the other restaurants had fewer hours, and now they're going to all ramp back up, and it's just going to be a big problem. And rather than waiting for it to be a problem, if some kind of light could be brought in for that parking lot across the street, I think that would be helpful. The Beer 30 was granted the right to have, I think, 4 weddings a year or a wedding a month or something, and they have not done anything for that sidewalk, and it's just going to be a real big problem coming up in the good weather.
Okay. Yeah, I know it does become a zoo down there. So we'll look at opportunities to put a crosswalk in. I know we have to make sure, or like kind of good practice to make sure it's certain distance from the crosswalks at the Porter intersection. So we'll kind of look at where that zone is and where we could put it most effectively. Thank you for the suggestion. Are there any questions online? If you do have a question, feel free to, again, use the smiley face icon, raise hand button, and then Shane McKeithen, our first district analyst, will unmute you.
Currently do not see any raised hands. However, Ed Spur did write in for one of the slides you had mentioned earlier. The property at 41st and Soquel has no residential around it, requiring residents to get in their cars for all trips. I'm concerned that the Highway 1 widening will install a sound barrier on the north side of Soquel Glen Mobile Home Park and not on the Ocean Kennedy Drive side, which will amplify the sound of Brookville Terrace Mobile Home Park, which is in District 2. But outside of that,
Okay, I think there's a couple questions there. For the second question around the sound wall, I would just Ed, if you want to email a question to our office, we can take some time to look at the plans and see if there's a way to address the concerns, or work with the Transportation Commission staff that's overseeing that project. For anyone, the best way to get a hold of me and the rest of the office is first.district@santacruzcountyca.gov. The CA is because there's a Santa Cruz County, Arizona. So santacruzcountyca.gov, first.district. Yeah, there you go. It's on the screen. The first part of the question was the need for residents to get in their cars if they are leaving the Soquel or 41st and Soquel area. I mean, well, actually, there is a significant amount of commercial right there in the area, whether it's Starbucks or Safeway. I mean, it's probably the best spot you could have to actually walk to some services. And then of course, with the bus coming, we're actually increasing the frequency as well. It'll come every 15 minutes on Soquel Drive. So there will be options there, as well as the green bike lanes going by that buffered or protected in that zone. So I think the hope is really that residents living there would have a lot of other options to get around and to get the services they need. I think I saw one other hand go up with the online audience.
Liz Pico, I'm unmuting her now.
Hi, Marty and Liz Pico here. Yeah, I wanted to know if there's been any progress on improving the cell coverage up in the rural parts of the county, up Old San Jose Road, Granite Creek Road, Happy Valley, that kind of area.
So I haven't seen any new cell tower applications come in. If you want to email us and with your address, we could see if there's anything in the works for your area. In general, the county, we have just recently improved our cell tower our cell tower ordinance to make it faster and hopefully a little bit more attractive and easier for companies like Verizon and AT&T to expand their cell coverage. We do know it's an issue throughout the rural area, and ultimately want to make sure more people can get connected. On the internet front, there's some interesting developments. So the state is funding what they're calling middle mile expansion, which means that they're going to bring fiber down Highway 17 as well as Highway 9. And so that should create some more opportunities then for local providers like Cruise.io to build broadband distribution points kind of in those general areas. I know Cruise.io is also installing a cutting edge broadband distribution point on Loma Prieta itself. We helped to fund that project, we, the county, with American Rescue Plan dollars. It's the national funding that came in after the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think the new technology can go through trees and in valleys and stuff. So I haven't seen the exact map of where that could serve, but should be pretty improved service, at least for wireless internet as well. But happy
There
to
might
look
be something that you could cut in, tie in with the landline. AT&T wanting to drop the landline service is
Mhm.
requiring that there is good cell service every place, and that they're proposing that it be dropped.
Yep, that's exactly right. AT&T's argument for their proposal is that, hey, if we didn't have to maintain this expensive and antiquated copper network, we could invest in more uh, and improved cell service. That's the argument they're making, and you know what? We could certainly ask if we want to use you as a case study. If you want to, again, let me know what your address is, and we can ask AT&T. Well, where would you put improved? How would you provide improved service to a customer like this?
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other online questions? Okay. Not seeing any. Do we have any more here in the audience? All right. Well, then that's it. I'm happy to hang out and for a good 10, 15 minutes longer and talk to any of you if you have other questions or comments you want to bring to me individually. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Night.